30 hits of LSD. Here's what happened is, I was working at this coffee shop back like 10 years ago on Mill Avenue in Tempe, and at the end of the night, I would put all the pastries and shit outside next to the dumpster instead of throwing them in the dumpster so all the homeless kids could go and, you know, pick through them and shit. And I wasn't supposed to. You were supposed to throw them in the dumpster and lock the dumpster, but I said fuck that, because they were always gone in the morning by the time the boss got home or got to work. So anyway, I was walking down, gonna catch the bus, and this hippie guy comes up to me, and I don't remember his name, but I'm familiar with his face. He's like, thanks man for the fucking food all the time, you know. And he was high as fuck. He's like, you want a fucking trip tonight, man? And I was like, I was off for the next day or two, so I was like, sure, man. He's like, open your mouth. And stupidly I did, and he had an eyedropper, and he squirted a bunch of fucking acid in my mouth. Like, I could feel it. And you're not supposed to. I could feel the shit running down the back of my throat. And I was like, dude, what the fuck? 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 What the fuck?
DMT Infinity. He's gonna fucking train your brain.
Shout out to DMT Infinity.
This is a collaboration with DMT Infinity.
DMT Infinity.
DMT Infinity.
DMT Infinity. DMT Infinity, you crazy motherfucker. This is our local astronaut. DMT Infinity is our local astronaut. You know, right now, NASA has a couple guys in space, and who cares what they're doing, because DMT Infinity is the real astronaut. This boy is steady blasting off, if you know what I'm saying.
DMT Infinity.
DMT Infinity.
DMT Infinity. DMT Infinity.
DMT Infinity. DMT Infinity. 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 Infinity.
What is going on, everybody, and welcome to the newest installment here on DMT Infinity. This is episode 6 of my podcast, A Psychedelic Point of View. And in this episode, we have somebody that most of you are probably already familiar with. You've probably seen at least one of his videos. This is the legend himself, the 30 hits of acid guy. Zach, how are you, man?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me on. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fucking amazing, man. High as fuck on that Mitra. Took my daily dose of Mad Honey, which y'all can get from madhoney.net. And ended up going for a walk earlier, listening to some amazing music. And before we started the episode, we were talking about psychedelics, and I wanted to ask you, have you ever tried Salvia divinorum?
I think I did once, maybe 20 years ago, but I bought it at a head shop, and I don't think it was very strong because it basically didn't do anything. It gave me a headache. And so I like kind of dismissed it as like being garbage, as just being like some like, you know, bunk stuff. But then you know, 10 years later, I watched people do it, like lose their shit on it. And I'm just like, I don't know. But so yeah, basically I've tried it, but probably not enough.
The reason why salvia has such a bad name is because of all of these teenagers just trying to get high and see crazy shit, and they end up smoking it out of a bong, and they don't know what they're getting themselves into. Salvia divinorum is not some, it's not like weed. This is a shamanic sacrament that has been used to contact interdimensional or multidimensional entities for millennia. And whenever you go into this experience thinking, yeah, man, I'm just gonna see crazy shit, man, I just want to get high, you can end up getting PTSD from that, and it almost never ends well. Like you said, there are people losing their fucking shit on that. And it's not a pretty sight, especially whenever you have the fucking cameramen fucking laughing their asses off at these people. Like, have some fucking sympathy. Why are you laughing at these people? This is like the worst thing they've ever experienced. And I've smoked salvia quite a few times in my life. I actually did a whole documentary on salvia. And I had some of the most incredible experiences, but I've also had some of the most terrifying experiences of my life.
Sounds kind of similar to DMT a little bit. How would you compare the two?
Okay, so people like to call Salvia divinorum the demonic cousin of DMT, which I guess in some degree you certainly could say that is a good metaphor. But they're they're completely different. The experiences are nothing alike. Granted, I have had salvia experiences that were kind of DMT like. Like I had this one experience where I was sitting up in the woods, and I had Salvia divinorum 40x, which I got from thebestsalvia.com. And I loaded my pipe. It wasn't a bong, it was just a normal pipe. I loaded it up. I cached I cashed the entire bowl in 2 hits, held each hit in for as long as I could, and I decided that I was going to meditate on it. Well, I just felt this urge to open up my eyes, and whenever I did, all of the trees in my vision all came together and became one tree. Like, reality didn't collapse in on itself. Like, the grass, the dirt, everything was still there, but all of the trees became one tree, and then started to glow into this really bright light. And from that light manifested an even brighter light, and it was an entity made of pure, vibrant light. And from its forehead, this white line shot out directly into my forehead, and I felt like my third eye was peeking open temporarily, and I could see reality through its perspective. And its perspective was like 360 degrees, so it was seeing everywhere all at once. And so I closed my eyes, and I'm in this deep state of meditation, listening to the band Tool. I think I was listening to Lateralis or something. And I'm just like analyzing all of these thoughts going in and out of my mind. And it was one of the most beautiful salvia trips that I've ever had. And I tried to explain it to a friend of mine, and he thought I was just fucking crazy. But that seems to kind of be the thing about psychedelics. You try and explain your experiences to people that have never done it, and they think you're fucking batshit insane. So whenever it comes to DMT, what got you interested in DMT?
Well, I mean, I've always been a fan of psychedelics. I mean, I started doing acid and shrooms when I was still in high school. I think I dropped my first hit of acid when I was 14. I don't think I did it again for like a year, but then by the time I was 15, I started really getting into a lot of acid, a lot of shrooms. Ironically, I didn't really hear about DMT though until probably, I don't know, 2012 maybe, 2013. Somebody asked me if I had ever done it, and I didn't, and somebody let me try some. But I was really drunk. We were at a party, and I remember doing it. I remember passing out. Like basically, he said that I just fucking like head down on the desk. I was really shit-faced drunk. I probably shouldn't have done it, but yeah, I had like a vivid dream that I was expecting some sort of spiritual experience, man, and I had a dream that, you know, that I was walking through AM/PM and I made myself a chili hot dog. So I kind of dismissed it as like, not, you know, it's just nothing, you know. And then tried it again, and didn't do enough. Kind of felt a little bit, and then somebody mailed me some, and I tried it again. That was the ticket. I just wasn't doing it right. And then when I did do it right the first time, I just, you know, bam, I was like, you know, really into it, because, you know, I finally got a good hit, you know, and when I was sober, and I really got to enjoy what I had to offer. So I guess what got me into it would just be my curiosity of psychedelics, you know, my desire to kind of push those boundaries. You know, I love psychedelics a lot. I mean, to be able to, like, I know it's cliche, but to kind of expand your mind, basically just to get into a different sort of reality that most other drugs can't offer. So for me, DMT is definitely the way to go. I mean, that's probably my favorite drug of choice at this point.
Yeah, a lot of people who don't take psychedelics seem to have this idea that psychedelics just get you high and make you see crazy shit, when the reality of the situation is, first of all, before psychedelics were called psychedelics, they were referred to as consciousness expanding drugs, because that is what they do. But they do so much more than that. Psychedelics like DMT and salvia are literally summoning tools, where you can literally summon multi-dimensional entities into your space. And some of them are good, some of them are bad. So you have to be well trained in these areas before you go that fucking deep. And these are learning tools. There are ways to build yourself on a conscious level, on a spiritual level, on a three-dimensional level, to help you become the best possible version of yourself in every moment. And I wish that more people understood that, because if they did, then you wouldn't have all of this propaganda brainwashing people into thinking that these are just some crazy ass drugs that'll put you into a mental clinic, because that's so far from what they do, and that is so far from the truth.
Yeah, you know, I've heard ever since, you know, I'll be 45 next year, and it's like ever since I was in high school, but back in the day, back in the early 90s, like I'd always heard, you know, you always hear these stories about, you know, somebody knows somebody that took, you know, too much acid and now they're fucking permanently frying, or, you know, you hear the other one, like, oh, if you take X amount, you know, make up a number, and then
a fucking orange, they think that they're a fucking bottle of orange juice, and they're in a fucking crazy house.
or like you're legally insane if you do X amount of LSD, and it's like, I guarantee you that that's not true, because I've probably done, you know, I don't know, I somewhere between 150 and 200 hits, tabs, whatever you want. Not, of course, not all at once throughout my life, of course, but you know, it's yeah, so if you're gonna be legally insane, I'd be legally insane, and I'm pretty fucking sane for the most part.
So did you ever get to meet that hippie again who gave you the dirty hits of acid?
I did not, man. I did not. I didn't see. I've only been back to that area, Tempe, Arizona, maybe 3-4 times in the last 20 years. And I guess he was gone. I mean, I went back, of course, after the experience, within a couple weeks after the experience. But then I went back maybe 5 years later, and then another 5 years. He disappeared. Somebody that I knew who knew the guy talked to him, and apparently they said he died. Like he not too long ago, like 5 years ago, of unrelated to drugs, something like some sort of heart condition, or maybe it was drug related. But so I don't think he's around anymore. But yeah, I wanted to punch him in the face, and I also wanted to thank him both, probably at the same time. So.
Man, dude, like that is fucking crazy, man. Like, so do you remember what you were saying to yourself during all of those hours whenever you went into that deep LSD trance?
Well, I was trying to talk myself down. Basically, I was trying to, you know, I've been able. If anybody's done some acid, if you've done enough where you know you've taken too much, you know, then there's a way where you kind of go through these things in your head and you start telling yourself, okay, we've done this before, you know, we're gonna get through this, whatever, you know. Try to rationalize to myself, like, okay, I'm not gonna be permanently fried, because everything in my head was like, you're fucking done. You are now that guy that everybody talks about in high school that's gonna be a fucking glass of orange juice. You're now that guy, you know. And of course you're frying balls, right? So your thoughts really are kind of just scattered, and then you have massive anxiety. I did, for doing that much, you know. And you know, so I basically was just telling myself it's gonna be okay, it's gonna be okay. And then I remember talking to myself where it was like, if I could just get home, but I thought I could see where my house was on this other side of the canal, but I couldn't. It was too difficult to walk in the directions, either direction. I actually sat there and contemplated jumping into the canal and trying to swim through it, across it, which I'm glad I didn't, because you know, I mean, that's.
Then we may not be sitting here talking.
Probably not. The canals are pretty fast in that area, and yeah, I mean, you'd have to be a really good swimmer. But I remember, you know, talking to myself, like, what am I going to do? I mean, basically it's just, you know, kind of going through like this anxiety thing, like trying to talk myself out of it. I wasn't really talking to myself like any like searching, like spiritual or soul searching thought processes here. I was basically just like trying not to shit myself and trying to figure out what the fuck I'm going to do, and trying to not you know, scare myself even worse than I was already scared. And that lasted for, I don't know, about probably a good 4 to 6 hours. So, and then before I was actually okay enough to where I felt like I could actually get up and walk. So yeah, it was definitely an experience.
So, I mean, it's not entirely related to psychedelics, but what is cannabis to you? Why do you use cannabis, or THC in general?
I really don't anymore. I probably smoked weed, probably cannabis, THC, probably less than a dozen times in the last 10 years. It just I quit for about 10 years, and in that 10-year time, for maybe I don't know, 2000 and 2010, it just the strength of weed like just grew so exponentially that, like, you know, when I had no tolerance, went from smoking weed every day, and then stopped it for 10 years and then tried again, even 1 or 2 hits, I was like so stoned. It was like one of those bad moments when you're stoned where, you know, it's no longer pleasant, it's no longer mellow, it's no longer fun. It was just anxiety to me. It just created anxiety, and, you know, kind of the panic attacks. You know, we've all smoked too much weed, or especially edibles will do it. Like, our heart's beating too fast, can't breathe. You know, one of those types of deals. And but it happened like every time. And I gave up on it. I'm just like, you know what, fuck it. It was like, I don't really need weed anymore. Plus I started drinking. So drinking, the two being, you know, struggling with alcoholism over the last decade, it's, you kind of generally one or the other. You meet somebody who drinks every day a lot and smokes weed every day a lot, because one usually times it went out, and for me it was alcohol went out over weed. So
so then you've never tried using cannabis for quote unquote spiritual purposes?
No.
Like meditation? Oh, okay.
Nope. Nope. I used it strictly to get high and to fucking have fun with my friends. And that's basically what I did. I did that for a long time. But yeah, I've never I never used weed medicinally or even spiritually. No.
So what is the highest dose of psilocybin mushrooms that you tried?
Whoa. I think, of good mushrooms. I remember a friend of mine and I, like, they were old mushrooms, so they weren't that good. But we ate half an ounce. But I wouldn't really consider that because yeah, we got high, but it wasn't like they were so old, like he was gonna throw them away. So we'll discount that. As good mushrooms, I'd say about. I think I did 6 grams once, and that was a lot. That was a healthy amount.
Yeah, that is what is called a heroic dose.
I think so. Yeah, usually I think it might be. Yeah, it was. Yeah, these mushrooms are so good that like you could split an eighth and you'd be really high. So like that's what we would do, split an eighth. And I don't know what got into me, but I was like, fuck it. And so yeah, I did 6 grams, and that was enough to make me not do shrooms for about 2 months. So,
how much can you recall from the experience?
Man, it was just like there was the ego death thing that happened several times actually, and it was just but it was just so like introspective that it was like hurtfully introspective where I didn't want to be that deep in my own head. And that's where I started, you know, when people have a bad trip. I don't think I've ever really had a bad trip. I've had some trips to produce some anxiety that I wanted, but I never freaked the fuck out. Even on 30 hits of acid, I didn't fucking freak the fuck out. I mean, well, okay, that's a lie. I kind of did, but I did it like not to the extent where you would hope so, or most people might. But I don't know. It was just it was very deep, but it was like kind of reminded me of a 4-ACO DMT or ACO 4-DMT thing I had, where it was like kind of felt at one with the universe, but it kind of also like felt like a disconnection. Like it was there, but I don't know. It wasn't like a love and like I'm one of my surroundings and I'm in tune with the nature and like, you know, harmony. And it was a little bit darker for me. It was just kind of like I felt really isolated and really I felt part of everything, but at the same time I made me sense and become more aware of my own mortality. And that I think is what the trip got really dark, is just when I started thinking about death. And like my purpose in life has no meaning because life is so much greater than just this fucking small little speck on something that's much greater than me, and this doesn't really care for me or doesn't care about us. But you know, and then it just kind of got loathsome, just self-loathing. I didn't like it. It was a little too dark. But,
so what do you think happens whenever we die?
That's what I think happens. I think what happens is I don't really believe in a God per se, like a God in such like religious sense, like a Christian God or Islam God or anything like that. I kind of more see, I think that we go back into the fold, almost like in kind of a Buddhist type of way where, you know, we are energetic beings, but I don't think our consciousness when we die becomes a soul, or I don't think we retain our consciousness, our ego. I think our essence goes back into the whole, which gets recycled, and life just keeps moving on. The wheel keeps turning forward. In life, when you're alive, you're at the top of the wheel. When you die, you get to the bottom of the wheel, and then it spins back up again and recycles. But not just you, everything in life, everything that's alive. So I think it's like fertilizer. We ground back up and spit back out to make things grow.
So in a sense, it's almost like we're kind of like plants in that area.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we enjoy our moment in the sun like plants. You know, get thirsty, we drink, and then we die, and fall into the dirt, and then from there, bugs and stuff move us around, and the dung beetle rolls you up to some poo and trucks you along, and you fertilizer for some seeds that fall somewhere or whatever. Yeah.
See, I kind of have a mixed perspective on death. First, I like to look at science, because science has proven on multiple occasions that energy cannot be created nor destroyed, only transformed or transferred. I think that what we call spirit, what we call souls, what we call energy, what we call consciousness, that these are all different words for the exact same thing. And whenever a person dies, the energy from their body, it disappears. Well, it's like, what the fuck is happening then? Because if energy cannot be destroyed, then it has to be transferred, or it has to be transferred to something or being transformed. So I think that what happens whenever we die is that we're literally transcendentalizing to a higher state of being. I think that what people call dreams, what people call realities, what people call dimensions, what people call hallucinations, I think that these are all different words for the exact same thing as well. So we exist in what is called three-dimensional space and time. So I think that whenever we die, we're going to another dimension, a higher dimension. And I don't think that everybody goes to the same place whenever they die. I think that where you go whenever you die is very dependent on where you are on a conscious level. So I could go to the 100th dimension, they could go to the 5th dimension, they could go to the 10,000th dimension. I think it is just very dependent on the individual. Granted, these are all theories and hypotheses, and nobody really has any real definitive answers, because it's not within the human experience to truly understand these sort of things. It is one of those things where you have to experience it in order to actually understand it.
Well, you know, and that's just it. I think too many people get caught up. Like, that's kind of basically what I was saying, minus the dimensional thing and the higher intellect stuff. But yeah, I mean, you know, like, we are energetic beings. When we die, we don't go somewhere specific. We just go out. But where that out goes and leads to next, I don't know. But people get caught up too much on saying that they know. I know there's a heaven, or I know there's this, or I know there's that. It's like, you know what? We really don't know, because at the end of the day, we're all just stupid monkeys. We really are. I mean, you know, it's you know, I don't know.
We're like
really
monkeys pointing at the fucking sun, going.
Well, that's basically how God started. Yes. Yeah, we crawled out of the forest somewhere, and yeah, we got perplexed by the moon and the sun and the orbits, and there we go. That's why God's always above. That's where he started, and our imaginations was up there, where we couldn't grasp. And that's, if you think of how God is untouchable. Most religions is like greater than, can't really see God, but he's there, kind of like these planets, right? And I don't know. It's cool to say you don't know. It really is, because we're just, as life is learning experience, and you know, I mean. I basically don't trust anybody who claims to know anything for certain, because there's no way you can. So, you know, it's almost like you're lying to me and you're lying to yourself if you say, I know for certain that heaven is real, because you don't. Maybe it is, but you don't know, and I don't know either. So.
Yeah, and you have to be open-minded enough to understand that what you think may not be true, or even if it is true, it may not be the entire truth. And I think that those sort of things is actually where shamanism comes into play. I think that is where shamanism started, because shamanism was the very first religion. That is how religion was practiced for the first few thousand years. And then it started branching off into Christianity and Buddhism and all of these other things. And then there are different branches of even those religions. And it just became a clusterfuck throughout the years. But originally, it was all based on personal experience and the use of plant-based traditional psychedelics like ayahuasca and peyote and psilocybin. And it is actually very possible that psilocybin mushrooms may have been the first psychedelics that human beings took, because they grow out of cow shit. So it just seems the most logical for us to have picked those up first and then went from there.
Well, yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah, you know, the DMT thing is like, would be very difficult to stumble across into the process of extracting the DMT from certain plants and barks. And, you know, it is a complicated process. Now, I could understand maybe, basically, it would have to be just right in order for somebody to do that. So mushrooms, though, I could easily see looking down. I mean, that's how we learned. That's how we survived as primates. Is, can we eat this? No. Yes. And then somebody eventually eats something and goes, what the fuck? And then, you know, spread them around, and everybody, then they kind of grew from there. Yeah, I mean, it was a, you know, trial and error, but yeah, definitely, I think that's probably the first hallucinogen.
And even whenever it comes to something like ayahuasca requires a variety of different plants. So you need an MAOI and you need the DMT. So the DMT will become orally active. And if you ask shamans how they figured out that you need all of these different plants, like the Banisteriopsis capivine for the MAOI and Mimosa hostilis, for the DMT, for example. There are many other plants. What they say is that the spirit helpers are the ones that told them what plants to put together. And as crazy as that sounds, it in a way it makes sense, because it is like, how else would you have thought to go to this side of the forest or the Amazon and then go to this side of the Amazon miles and miles away, take these plants, brew them together in a very specific manner just to get this psychedelic experience?
Yeah, it seems improbable that you would stumble upon that by coincidence. It does seem improbable. But if we're talking about the course of thousands of years, and we're talking, countless generations, I could see how mixing where food is scarce, mixing stuff together, and then somebody started a trip, and then they probably stopped and said, "What the fuck?" In trial and error, and they probably started taking shit out to see what was actually making them trip, and then they could probably, if there was 20 ingredients in this pot, at the course of thousands of years, maybe you would, start picking out the pieces that, didn't work, or trying to determine which ones were there. MAOI inhibitors, wild roost seeds is another one.
Oh God, dude, this tastes so fucking nasty.
Yeah, they do. And so, I don't know, man. I know a lot of people prescribe to the idea that you're connecting on DMT trips. I've seen them too, these entities and stuff like that. I'm not convinced that these are real, and I can tell you why, because I've tested this. I've done DMT probably 5 to 10 times a day for 4 months. So I've had plenty of time to experiment with this stuff. I don't always do enough to break through, just because that's kind of taxing, and it's kind of try to save that for moments. But I've been able to see these entities, which at first I thought were real, and then I kind of became a little skeptical. To where I'm also a lucid dreamer, and I have been before the drugs, where I can kind of, when I know that I'm dreaming, and I kind of manipulate my dreams and make things happen and make people appear and disappear and shit. I kind of, to a lesser greater degree, I can kind of control my dreams to some extent, unless I'm like really deep sleep. And I've played with these entities. I couldn't at first because of the drug itself wasn't able to, but after doing it enough times on a regular basis, like I am now, this is actually what you're looking at right here. And it's like I have, my tolerance is enough where I can kind of manipulate it. It's almost like a dream, and I've looked at these entities and I can make them, will them to my command, which tells me that they're hallucinations. But that, that's my opinion, and I could be wrong, but that's been my experience.
Yeah, some people do think that what these entities are archetypes of the unconscious, so that they are a manifestation of you in some sense, or a reflection of humanity in some sense. So it's not entirely impossible, and everybody has a different viewpoint on what they are. But regardless of what anyone thinks about them, they are very real, and anybody can come into contact with them. And that is one thing that people who don't take psychedelics don't realize, that you and I can come into contact with the exact same entity, even if we've never met each other. And I think that just gives more validity to their existence, whether you want to look at them as a projection of your unconscious or multidimensional aliens or whatever. And that is what is so fascinating to me about psychedelics.
Well, I wish Carl Jung would have, experimented with psychedelics. I think it was a little bit before his time, or a little after him, but he's the one that came up with the term archetypes, and also a theory like the collective unconsciousness, where on a certain level, on an unconscious level, there's a collective where we're all part of that. And therefore, some things can be explained in somewhat of a quasi-scientific way and less of a mystical way, where there are certain aspects of our, because we're all part of the same tribe, species, humans, parts of our subconscious are linked together, whether we like it or not. And imagery and archetypes, which are basically just personifications of things, of usually of emotions. And, it's quite possible that these entities, I wonder, here's what's weird is like with the DMT stuff, in some of the studies where they've given DMT to 500 people, like 30 of them reported seeing some sort of alien-like creatures, and the rest of them didn't. And if you look back before that, before aliens became so popular, and that's another thing, it's kind of a pop icon thing where in current time, Aliens are everywhere. You go to Walmart, there's aliens on lunchboxes. Movies, there's at least one probably, you know, movie in a theater, if theaters are even still playing anymore with the Corona thing.
Yeah, Alien actually has a reboot that's coming out.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, you can't look anywhere without seeing something about aliens, you know, and I think that that's so ingrained in our subconscious that instead of seeing God, aliens, you know, it's because the psychedelics, it's because you kind of can get displaced, disassociated, especially on a real powerful psychedelic like DMT, it can disassociate you and jolt you out where you don't know where you are. I mean, I didn't know what happened many times on DMT where I took a big fucking, you know, hit, and it was like all of a sudden, next thing I know, I don't know where the fuck I am and what happened, and that disassociates your ego from what's going on, and then it's alien, literally the word alien being foreign, right? It's alien from you, and you know, when we hear stories like on, you know, like popular shows like Joe Rogan, you know, you hear the DMT stories. It's kind of planting, it's kind of suggestion. It's kind of planting these seeds that this is what you're going to see. You know, this is what to expect. People before TV, people before this who were experiencing this stuff didn't necessarily see aliens. A lot of them saw spirits, like spirits of animals, like Indians and stuff, you know, skinwalkers, animal spirits, stuff like that, because that was big in their culture at the time. That's a theory. Could be wrong. I've been wrong before.
Yeah, and I mean, it is a interesting theory. It is kind of like the idea of like looking at an Alex Gray painting and then experiencing that in a DMT trip. It is like, did that painting influence my trip, or is this something that exists whether that painting exists or not? And it's a very fascinating question because in some sense we may not have any answers to that. And at that point, all you can do is hypothesize on it. But no matter what you experience, or what you think of these experiences, the fact is these experiences are still very real. And even if they impact us in different ways, they still have a very dramatic impact on our lives.
But that is a good point. And a friend of mine who's been experimenting for the first time with DMT brought that up to me too. In some of his visions, you know, he was talking about plant people and how he feels that it's putting him in touch with plant-like entities. That the DMT itself is some sort of vehicle or some sort of essence of a different life, possibly interdimensional plant-like species, since the DMT comes from plants, and that connected him to these entities. And then I said, "Are you sure about that, man? You know, you sure it's not?" Because he's a smart dude. And he's, you know, he's a psychoanalytical, critical type thinker, like I like to think myself. And he's like, he looked at me, he's like, "Does it really matter?" And I thought about it. He's like, "Yeah, you're right. It really doesn't matter, because whether they're subconscious or whether they're actual interdimensional deities, the effect can be just the same upon the person and the psyche, and it can be life-changing regardless."
Absolutely. Psychedelics not only saved my life, but they saved my mind. Whenever I was young, first of all, I was a spoiled brat. So I had everything handed to me. I had no respect for my family. I had no respect for people in general. I was always so selfish. I was never thankful for anything. I was a borderline sociopath growing up. And whenever I started getting into psychedelics, LSD is whenever I had my first real ego death experience. And that slowly started to aid me in the realm of not being like that anymore. But then during my first DMT experience, well, my first DMT breakthrough, I just remember, so I can't remember the entirety of the experience, but I remember that towards the end of it, I remember this pinkish purple mist coming out of my roof. And in my head, it was like I knew in that moment that this is the voice of God. I don't know why I thought that, but it was like in that moment, that is what it was to me. And me and the voice of God started to have this telepathic therapy session together. And he was like fixing my mind in every possible way. And I just remember coming down from this experience, it felt like hours and hours of this therapy session with God. And I just remember getting up, going into the other room where my mom was, and just giving her the biggest hug and just like thanking her for everything. And just seeing her in this whole new light of, hold on. My software clicked down. Okay, so I'm just like hugging her and I'm thanking her, telling her how much I love her, and just with this brand new perspective on life, and just being thankful for everything, like every object around me, for being able to breathe, for being alive, and it was just the most beautiful moment up to that point in my life, man. And psychedelics just seem to have that magic to them, and that is one reason why they should be legal, because these aren't just your normal drugs, man. These are like the ultimate therapy tools. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, psychedelics was a major major catalyst and ingredient for me kicking alcohol. You know, I was an alcoholic for a solid 10 years, and I guess I still am, but I mean, to the point where it's life-threatening. And if it wasn't for psychedelics, I mean, I don't know, you know, I mean, I'd be in bad shape. And yeah, I mean, it took away my urge to drink, not completely, but enough that I was able to get a grip on it, which before I felt helpless. And, you know, psychedelics have treated depression, anxiety for a lot of people. But, you know, before I glorify some of the medicinal aspects for uses of psychedelics, I will also say some caution. Certain mental illnesses, I've met a lot of people who go in thinking, okay, I'm going to microdose because they heard it on Joe Rogan or whatever. I'm going to microdose on LSD or shrooms, and, you know, my anxiety and depression is going to go away. And actually, it'll make it a lot worse. It depends on the type of mental illness and emotional illness you suffer from, like schizophrenia. You don't want to use like if you're, well, you can, but I mean, you're playing with fire.
And it also depends on you as an individual and how you respond to having said mental illness.
Well, that's true too. You know, and with psychedelics also, it's a mood amplifier, and it makes you more receptive. And that's hard to be receptive to that extent when you're sober. But under psychedelics, you're more receptive and receptive to stimuli. And if that stimuli happens to be negative, whether it's internal or external, then yeah, I mean, it can be anxiety provoking. But, you know, for the most part, you know, when you start psychedelics, if you're a newbie, you know, it's like, don't know what to expect. I always tell people, like, you know, do a modest amount at first. You know, if it recommends, if your buddies are taking 2 hits, do 1, you know, and if it's your first time. But the important thing is go into it with a good attitude. You know, if you go into it with scared and that you're, you know, anxious and that you're worried you're going to turn to a glass of orange juice and shit like that, you might not have a good time. You know, you're not going to turn to a glass of orange juice, but that's another beautiful thing I love about DMT, and why I always recommend DMT as being the first psychedelic anybody uses. Although it's the most powerful.
I was just about to ask you that too.
Sure. Although it's the most powerful, it only lasts for 10 minutes. As you're smoking it, that is. And so that way, like, you know, God forbid if you're first time on acid, you take too much acid or you have a bad trip, because you're going to be stuck for a while. You know, you're going to be in it for a while, for hours. Whereas DMT, you can have I've had many bad experiences on DMT, many. And it's like, but it's gone. By the time I start to lose my shit, it's over, because it only lasts for 5 or 10 minutes. That's why, that's one of the reasons why I like DMT a lot too.
Have you ever had DMT experiences where it felt like it was like weeks or hours or years or something?
I've certainly lost track of time. Yeah. When I've been displaced many times, when I've had breakthroughs, when it's like, I've like woken up, oftentimes I've done it in a hotel, just because, you know, when I would live at home, because of my surroundings, it's not, I can't always, you know, have the opportunity to possibly be like, you know, like, I need to make sure nobody fucks with me for 10 minutes. I can't always say that while I'm at home, but when I'm in a hotel like I am right now, is when I usually do hard experiments of DMT. But because the hotel's unfamiliar, I blasted off and like woke up and look around. I'm like, where the fuck am I? What just happened? Who am I? I don't even know who I was. Like, what just happened? And then it takes slowly after, you know, a minute or two, I like start like, oh, okay. Oh, fuck. I see the pipe. And I'm like, oh, fuck, that's what happened. Okay. You know, but it's kind of fun. It's, I mean, it can be scary, but once you, depends on the person, right? Some people lose their shit. That happened to them, right? So other people like me, I just think it's fucking funny after about a minute.
And everybody reacts differently to different mind-altering substances. Like, there are some people who are better off doing LSD rather than DMT, or psilocybin mushrooms rather than ayahuasca. And people just have to find what works best for them. It is kind of like cannabis. Like, don't get me wrong, I love weed. I smoke weed as much as I possibly can. But I fucking hate stoners and potheads who are like, yeah, man, everybody should smoke weed, yada, yada, yada. The world would be such a better place if everybody just smoked. Like, no, not everybody's the same, and cannabis affects everybody differently. For example, you have lazy stoners and you have productive stoners. Like, you have people like Snoop Dogg, and you have people who do nothing but sit on their couch, smoke pot, and eat junk food all day. Everybody's different, and they have to find what works for them.
Well, you know, speaking of cannabis specifically, or THC, like because my buddy was just like, dude, cause he knew I didn't really smoke weed, but he's like, dude, you got to try dab, man. You got to try dabs. I'm like, yeah, I never done dab. And I was like, nah, man, you know I don't smoke weed. He's like, I remember that movie Friday. I know you don't smoke weed, but it's Friday. I got no shit to do. Got no job. I was like, okay, give me the fucking hit. And it did was one hit of that, and I was like, oh, fuck. I was so stoned. I was like, and I looked at him, and I was like, an hour later, like I could barely like move and shit. Looked at him, I was like, dude, I would rather take fucking hit for hit. I'd rather do LSD. I'd rather take fucking 6-7 hits of LSD than fucking. I don't even think I'd be alive if I took 6 or 7 dab hits. Like, I mean, I might be uncomfortable after 6 or 7 hits of LSD, but I would rather take LSD hit for hit than dabs or wax. Yeah.
The first time that I ever did dabs, do you know what LSA is?
I've heard of it. Is it the morning glory seeds or something like that?
Okay. Yeah, and it can also be found in Hawaiian baby woodrose seeds. But I had taken a morning glory seeds, and I took I took twice the recommended dose, so it was like beyond threshold level. And and during the come up, man, so here's how it went. My cousin, well, technically my brother, he came in and he had picked me up, and we went over to his friend's house, who was his boss at the time, construction worker. And so we had got to the house, and I'm sitting on the couch, and his boss comes into the room, and he's like, hey, have you ever tried dabs before? And I'm like, no. And he's like, you want to? I was like, fucking right, I do. And he had one of those vaping RDAs that he rigged, so you could hit it with dabs on it. And at this point, I'm starting to come up on the LSA because I took the seeds in the car, and so I hit this bitch as fucking hard as I could, and I'm holding the hit in for as long as I can. So I feel fine, and I'm just thinking to myself, dude, I just hit that like a fucking beast, dude. I just hit that like a badass. As soon as I exhale, I start coughing my fucking lungs up for fucking minutes on end, and I'm just like on the couch like and the first thing that I remember after I start calming down from coughing, I just remember looking up, and his boss's dog comes into the room, and his fucking dog's face starts shape-shifting into all of these fucking different faces, and its fur is like fucking hippie tie-dye and shit, and I'm just there like looking at this bitch for probably like a couple of minutes, and then my brother is like, dude, are you all right? And I just look over at him, and I'm just like, dude, I'm tripping balls right now. And then the experience like keeps going on and on and on. But that was the first time that I ever hit dabs, man. Dabs are fucking insane, man. Some people underestimate just how powerful that form of THC is.
Yeah, man. It's even the stuff that they pass off as like just like, you know, regular street weed nowadays. That shit, just your low budget weed nowadays, that was a skunk bud. That was the fucking primo bud 20 years ago. So it's like the shit that they considered fucking premium now is not even weed to me. It's like a whole new another type of narcotic, and it's too much for me, man. And the first bad trip I ever had on psychedelics was when I smoked weed with it. But yeah, that's just me. I'm really sensitive to weed, though. That's the thing. But yeah.
Well, I mean, I've had experiences where I'm smoking quote unquote Reggie with people, and it probably is Reggie, but like I would be high as fuck, and they are just sitting there like, man, this is some bunk ass weed, and I'm just like, what the fuck are you talking about? I'm fucking in a whole nother fucking place mentally right now. What are you talking about? This is some good weed. No, man, you should try the fire shit that I get from this person. Like, what the fuck, man? There's some good weed out there these days, man.
When weed became legal in California, dispensaries started popping up in like the, I don't know, early, like, I don't know, 2012, 2010, something like that. Like, I thought I was all Mr. Badass, went to the dispensaries just because I wanted to, just because so I could say that I could walk into, you know, a fucking store and order a fucking joint. And I did, you know, and I was like, give me like the fucking, you know, give me the weakest fucking weed you got. And he's like, really? I'm like, yeah. He's like, here. And he's like, hands me a jar like shake. And he's like, here. This is shit that we wipe our ass with. And I was like, all right, it sounds great. You know, and fucking, it was still too strong, man. I was like, fuck. Oh, man. Yeah, I used to joke with the dispensary guy, because he knew me as a 30 hits guy, too. It is like, fucking, he's just like, he always make fun of me because it's down on Mission Boulevard in Mission Boulevard in Mission Beach, San Diego, where I have stomping grounds is, and it's like, he always fucking be like, hey, it's a 30 hits guy. He fucking eats ass like no tomorrow, but yeah, he can't lose his shit after a fucking joint. And I was like, yeah, fuck you.
30 hits of acid? It's alright, I'm fine. One hit of weed? Dude, I'm losing my shit.
Basically, yeah. There's no fucking way I can do 30 hits of weed. No fucking way. I think as you get older too, though, and it's not a thing where it's like, oh, I've done too many drugs. Just when you get older, man, like, your brain, I think, softens up a little bit. When you're just taking a few hard, it's like a boxer, man, you boxer in his prime, he can take a lot of heavy punches, and he does, right? But he steps back in the ring 20 years later, those punches do add up a little bit, but age sets in, man. Your body becomes more sensitive to things. I can't drink like I used to either. I was able to drink almost a bottle of vodka a day. Now it's like, because I don't have a tolerance, just because of my age. I'm in good health, but it's like, yeah, if I were to drink that much now, I'd probably die. It's like, which is a good thing too. I think you slow your roll. I think your body starts to tell you, like, you know what? We're not going to recover quite as easy as you used to, so we're going to punish you a little bit harder so you remember not to do this again.
Yeah, and I mean, in many ways, that is a very good thing, because it is like, if you want to do all of that whenever you're young, and hopefully you're doing it to build yourself up as an individual, to learn new things, to have new experiences, to maybe use it for therapy or maybe for spiritual purposes, then by the time you're older, you've done all of that, and now you become more sensitive to those substances, and your body knows what you shouldn't have too much of, and you can just go on from there. There are different stages of life, and I think that probably counts for any mind-altering substance. And in some ways, that is a very beautiful thing, because it just shows your growth as an individual and as a human being.
Absolutely, man. I would definitely encourage anybody, just about anybody, unless you suffer from like some serious mental illnesses. I encourage anybody to try psychedelics. I'd point to DMT first, just because it's short lasting, so you can get a taste, so you kind of get aware of what it's like. And then, I'd probably move on to shrooms, maybe LSD after that. I mean, that'd be that. If I was your uncle, that's what I would say to you at the fucking family Christmas when you're outside smoking a joint. I catch you, be like, "No, man, try this." See that? That's where it's at, man. Fuck that joint. Joints are for pussies. Try this. Oh,
dude,
man. But yeah,
I have never been a fan of joints though, man. Like if I smoke weed, I have to have like a bong, or in the very least a pipe. I don't even like fucking blunts. Like, I'll smoke out of a blunt, but it is just such a waste of weed, man.
It
because
is, man.
I could break down that entire fucking blunt, make it last me like 10 sessions out of a bong. That's
true. But the joint thing was when weed was practically fucking free. It was cheap, and it was like, we used to fucking, school, people would just bring in fucking joints, and we just sit there and just fucking pass them around, because it was like nothing. It was like a cigarette. So it was just a social drug. Now it's become all fucking hydroponics and all fucking blah, 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 in this and that. And, it's morphed into something it's a more marketable, huge marketable drug, massive profit drug. So it's been valued. Its value is a lot higher than it used to be, but it's all good.
Have you ever heard of a band called Tool?
One second. Yes.
The lead singer, Maynard James Keenan, he went on record for saying that he did LSD over 1,000 times within the course of high school alone. And if that doesn't show you that psychedelics can have a positive impact on somebody's mind, I don't know what will. Because all of these stories of people turning into a glass of orange juice and all that shit, if that was really true, Maynard James Keenan would not be the person that he is today. And even to this day, he's a very intelligent, down-to-earth, lyrical genius, man.
Yeah, for sure. I think the stigma is being lifted. And, celebrities coming forward and talking about their experiences, especially like Joe Rogan. Stuff like that. That's all, that's really good, because it shows people who do psychedelics aren't the same as, like, say, your meth heads or your crack heads. They're not degenerate, low life drug addicts. In fact, psychedelics are not really addictive. So it's, it's a different class of drug that I think society is starting to separate the two now. And in fact, certain states are starting to, decriminalize or push even possibly getting legal, like mushrooms. I think Oregon and California are up for it. Washington, West Coast, yeah.
Absolutely. And drugs are not just drugs. I hate that blanket statement. All drugs are different. All drugs have different effects. There's a big difference between sugar, caffeine, DMT, and alcohol. But they're all drugs, but they all do different things. And I would like to see a future where all plant-based traditional psychedelics are stopped being looked at as Schedule 1 drugs and made legal and accessible to anybody of a mature age. And we do a lot of research on it, and we actually have real information out there to people, so people can have whatever positive life-changing effects the psychedelics give to them, and they can turn their lives around or become a better person or get off of crack and meth and whatever, so that we can actually create a better society. Because in societies where psychedelics are not frowned upon, these are very good societies full of really good people. You don't see people raping each other, stealing from each other, lying to each other, or any of this toxic shit that is in the world. And I wish that more people realize that. I just want to see psychedelics legalized and really understood by the right people, and just generally by everybody. And yeah,
I agree, man. You got my vote.
all right, everybody, so I do hope that you all enjoyed this episode of A Psychedelic Point of View. If y'all did, leave it a like, subscribe to DMT Infinity, subscribe to 30 Hits of Acid Guide, there will be links down in the description, and hit that bell notification button to be notified each and every single time that I upload a brand new video and or do a live stream. And as always, I'm your host, DMT Infinity, and I will catch you all in the next.
Thanks for having me, man. Good night.